Welcome to Investment 360. In the hot seat this evening, Tom Winterboer, banking leader at PwC. Tom, appreciate your time. Looking at the survey out the financial services sector globally, can you tell me a little bit about how the survey was compiled and in terms of your reach among the financial services companies in the world?
Sure. It really started off by just a global CEO survey amongst all CEOs, and it was launched in Davos, last month. So we had about 1,300 CEOs participate. We then did a separate cut of about 360 odd CEOs in the financial services sector globally. So that would include banking, capital markets, insurance, and asset management, and roughly a third of each. So those would be participants, certainly some from South Africa, but mostly, from Europe.
So mostly the developed world?
No, also the developing world, so, participants, India, China and the like. So really, quite a balanced view, had more than 50 countries participate, so a very balanced view.
So if you break it up regionally, the sentiment between developing against developed, is there a definite difference in outlook, or are they pretty much the same?
Absolutely, very different outlook. The developed world are much more concerned about their own growth, and much more negative in terms of where things are going. Developing world is very concerned about the global economy, Eurozone and the like, but certainly more positive about their own position in terms of what is there.
And just in terms of, we had a discussion about mergers earlier, just in terms of developing country financial services businesses buying into developed countries, is there any thoughts going on regarding that, or is that something on the back burner?
M&A is certainly part of it. But I think in the developing world, I think it's really more saying, let's look at my own market, make sure that I really deal properly with my own market. But then after that, saying yes, one can certainly look at developing markets, and typical areas would certainly be, South America, China, India, Africa.
How heavily has confidence been hit by the Eurozone and the uncertainty that we're facing in that territory?
As I say, just looking at it, 50% of them really saying that they're very concerned about the economic growth. And, it's Eurozone, but when you go back and you look at something like China, certainly, a bit of slower growth there. And the Chinese in the survey saying, well, they once again concerned about the declining export orders, driven from low consumption by developed countries and certainly the West.
So it really does illustrate that the global environment is interlinked.
Absolutely, yeah, very interlinked. But then, you start looking at the developing markets, and all of a sudden people are saying, look, we can certainly build our own businesses, and so very confident over next year and over the next 3 years.
Were there any concerns about Basel III and its implementation from those CEOs?
Absolutely. So Basel III on the banking side, very concerned, and regulation, a theme that really runs through the whole survey and comments on that. So Basel III, just in terms, and if you look at the developed world, a lot more concern around liquidity and solvency, so capital there. If we come back to the developing side, in South Africa, certainly, we're more concerned certainly about global economy and credit as they are, but then really getting into issues such as crime, criminality, fraud, with things like liquidity and capital, way down on the list. So I think we're in a much better position.
Outlook for 2013, do we maintain a confidence stance across the board?
I think firstly in terms of economy, I think those concerns must still be out there, and I'm sure they're still out there. In terms of South African companies and developing companies, certainly much more bullish in terms of what can be achieved.
Just with regards to the banks, I mean, South African banks are very well capitalized when it comes to Tier 1 capital. Those of developing countries such as Brazil, Argentina, etc., what are their balance sheets looking like right now?
Haven't specifically looked at that, but I think they're in a very similar state as South Africa, so reasonably well capitalized. And just to swing it a bit in terms of China, well, I think they've got problems of their own, and in fact less so than.
But I mean, with regards to China, the government normally just puts money in the bank at the end of the day.
Can certainly top it up. So I think from that perspective, but they in terms of their banking system and so on, a country like ourselves would certainly be in a much better position.
US participants in the survey?
Quite a number of US participants in terms of the overall global survey. We didn't pull out US in terms of financial services, but there must have been quite a number of those. No specific comment on that, but I think the US, once again, probably slightly better placed than Europe itself.
Is that an overriding sentiment that the US is potentially gaining traction in light of the recent economic news flow?
If you look at the confidence, yes, one would they would certainly look better on that side.
And how are they dealing with their debt issues with regards to mortgage loans, etc.? Because they're still sitting with a lot of bad debts.
Certainly it remains an issue, and in terms of, I think it's really seeing where it pans out, but, once again, things that happened over the last 20 years, you don't fix it in, as someone said, in 20 months. So certainly a major concern still.
Was there any concern that we may see a worst case scenario panning out and a second global financial crisis unfolding of a similar magnitude to the first one?
Participants didn't go that far, but certainly at the time saying, look, Europe on the brink of recession, and with that, and one has looked at the downgrading of Portugal, Italy, Spain, and so on, concerns around that. You look at a negative outlook on the UK, France, Austria, and so on. So I think concerns around that, and I suppose, well, how far could it go? But things not looking very good from an overall global perspective there.